Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for having this hearing. Thank you all for being here. And I'd like to ask you about our targeting of ISIS assets. The New York Times reported on May 26th that, quote, American officials say that they are not striking significant and obvious Islamic State targets out of fear that the attacks will accidentally kill civilians, but many Iraqi commanders and some American officers say that exercising such prudence with airstrikes is a major reason ISIS has been able to seize vast territory in recent months in Iraq and Syria. Dr. Kagan, would you agree with that assessment? And is it possible to step up airstrikes while still, to the degree possible, preserving civilian lives?
I think that there is a trade-off between deciding that you're going to have a more effective air campaign and accepting a higher risk of civilian casualties. I think if your standard for civilian casualties is low, you're probably going to have a very hard time increasing the intensity of the air campaign, especially as long as you're not prepared to put forward air controllers on the ground, which would be something that would mitigate that. But I think that we have too high a standard from the standpoint of collateral damage and civilian casualties. I think that the truth is this is a war, and we always try to minimize collateral damage and civilian casualties, but a standard of effectively zero has, I think, done enormous harm to our ability to prosecute this war with the tools that we have at our disposal.
Okay. Thank you. And then for any one of you, I'm really concerned about Jordan's welfare. They have the direct threat of ISIS wanting to overcome them, and they have the indirect threat of floods of refugees from Syria, especially, overwhelming their infrastructure and their budget. What can we do to better help Jordan? What should Jordan be doing to help itself?
I'm glad you raised that, because I did include mention of Jordan in my written remarks, and I think it is critical. Jordan, of course, does have a very effective and efficient military, police, and intelligence service. But that said, I think the waves of refugees pose a long-term threat, not just a humanitarian issue, but to the political and economic fabric of that country, as well as the surrounding region. And I think that trying to get more involved with those refugee populations, possibly through international organizations, but to deepen the understanding of what is going on there and help to ensure that they don't become subject to concerted radicalization campaigns or support networks, and to eventually find a disposition for these people. I doubt they're going to go, most of them will go back home. So this poses a very critical long-term threat.
Just one thing to add to that. I absolutely agree that we shouldn't expect that they're going to go home, and we should plan that these are not just refugees. Many of these people are going to be new citizens, essentially, of Jordan. But this is a place where many of our Arab allies, I think, also have a responsibility, and we should be leading politically to pull them along. It's a place where they can contribute. Even if they're not going to contribute militarily, this is something where they can contribute, where money matters, and they can offer that.
And either Mr. Eisenstadt or Dr. Kagan, anything to add to that?
I think you're making an excellent point, and I am also very worried about Jordan and the strain that's being put on it. And I would just turn it in a slightly different way, because there are a lot of people in town who are talking about the need to raise an Arab army to fight in Syria and Iraq, and the Jordanians should fight, and the Saudis should fight, and so forth. And you've highlighted one of the reasons why that's not really feasible. The Jordanians, I would not be enthusiastic about calling on the Jordanians to deploy large numbers of their own forces abroad for a whole bunch of reasons.
And I'll just add, you can't worry too much about Jordan because of its importance vis-a-vis our allies, Saudi, Israel. But that said, keep in mind they've been dealing with the problem of refugees for well over a decade now, or actually even longer. And their resilience and their ability to do so is remarkable. But that said, we can't take them for granted. They are absolutely critical ally of ours. And we are doing things. They get financial aid, they get military assistance. I can't say whether we should be doing more or not, but I think we are focused on that issue.
Well, and you probably know in the NDAA, which is going to be going to conference, we just voted on with the Senate, I think we put in $300+ million of very good military aid for Jordan.